The first thing I noticed wasn't the noise. It was the silence between vibrations. My phone kept lighting up on the kitchen counter, over and over, but nobody was leaving voicemails. Just messages stacking on top of each other. Payroll screenshots, red numbers. A balance that dipped below zero like gravity suddenly changed its mind. I stood there in my socks, coffee burning because I forgot to pull the pot away, staring at one line someone had circled in a shaky finger swipe. Net pay negative. Not late. Not pending. Negative. That's when my chest tightened. Not panic yet. Something colder. By 8:15. I had messages from 3 supervisors and 1 union rep. Nobody was yelling. That was worse. When people don't get paid, the shouting usually comes later. I knew exactly why this was happening. I'd known since Friday afternoon. 3 days earlier, the CEO leaned back in his chair and said, calm as weather, that they didn't need my timekeeping and payroll system anymore. He said it like he was clearing out old furniture. Then he added the real part. His son was taking over operations. Fresh perspective. Modern approach. I told them Monday was the cutoff. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I just said that after Monday morning. Payroll doesn't roll. Banks don't wait. Employees don't get paid. And unions don't stay quiet. They nodded, smiled, even like I was being dramatic. Now it was Monday. I scrolled again. Someone wrote that their rent was due today. Someone else asked if this was a test run. A warehouse lead sent a single line saying the guys were standing around and nobody knew what to tell them. My name is Maribel Knox. I am 48 years old. I didn't build that system to be clever. I built it so people could eat, so they could show up and trust that the hours they worked would turn into money where it mattered. The phone buzzed again. HR this time. Missed call. Then another. I set the mug down without drinking it. My hand was shaking. Just a little. Not fear. Not yet. It felt more like watching something fall that you already let go of. I grabbed my keys. Not because I knew what I was going to do, just because standing still wasn't an option anymore. I kept driving even though I knew where this memory would land. People at work used to say the system ran itself. That always made me laugh. Nothing runs itself. It just runs on someone you stop noticing. I built that payroll and timekeeping setup piece by piece. Nights, weekends. In between fixing other people's mistakes. Why is this approval step so slow, the COO asked once. Because if it skips, I said, someone gets shorted. He sighed. It's just numbers. Maribel. No, I said, it's groceries. That was the conversation. Over and over. Different people. Same tone. Every Monday, I'd be in early. Not because anyone told me to, because I didn't trust things not to break. They always break somewhere. A missed punch. A supervisor approving the wrong shift. A batch file hanging at the worst possible second. One time a manager joked, you worry too much. I told him, that's why you get paid on time. He stopped smiling. I knew whose overtime mattered. I knew which crews couldn't afford a delay. I knew when a negative balance wasn't a glitch but a cascade that would eat the whole run if it wasn't stopped right there. HR leaned on me constantly. Can you just push it through? No, I said, not clean yet. Finance complained. This process costs too much time. It costs less than fixing a strike? I said, nobody argued with results. They just assumed the results were automatic. The CEO barely spoke to me unless something went wrong. When things went right, he didn't say anything at all. That was fine. I didn't need applause. I needed control. Then his son showed up and started asking why it all looked so complicated. I told him, because it is. He smiled like that was a challenge. And that's the part people never get. They see a system working and think it must be simple. They don't see the hands keeping it upright every week, adjusting, catching, deciding who gets paid and who doesn't get hurt in the process. So ask yourself this, honestly, why do companies underestimate the systems that keep everything running? He showed up on a Tuesday and acted like the place had been waiting for him. Andrew came in with a new badge and a grin that didn't touch his eyes. He shook hands too fast, looked past people while they were still talking. MBA from somewhere expensive. He said it out loud, like it mattered. We're here to modernize. He told the room, Cut friction. Cut waste. I asked him what he thought the waste was. He glanced at my dashboard. This, he said, too many steps. Those steps keep paychecks clean. I said. He smiled again. There are tools that handle that now? I told him. Tools don't handle judgment. He laughed. Soft, like I was being cute. In the next meeting, he talked about savings. $200,000 a year if we streamlined payroll. He said it while the CEO nodded. Nobody asked what happened when payroll failed. Nobody ever does. Andrew pulled me aside later. You've done great work, he said. But we're moving fast. Fast where I asked, forward. He said, with people who can keep up. I watched him say my job out loud without saying my name. By Thursday, he was approving changes I hadn't signed off on. By Friday, he was CC'd on emails that used to come to me first. Power doesn't slam the door. It slides in quietly and locks it from the inside. The CEO stopped asking my opinion. He started asking his son if things were possible. Andrew said yes to everything. That's when I knew this wasn't about improvement. It was about replacement. And not because Andrew understood the system, because he didn't need to. So tell me this. Have you ever seen authority handed to someone who hadn't earned it? They called it a sink. That should have been my first clue. The CEO sat at the head of the table. Andrew to his right. HR on the other side. Already holding a folder like she'd rehearsed this part. Nobody asked how my morning was. We're restructuring, the CEO said. Calm, polite, like weather. Andrew jumped in. We need speed. Fewer dependencies. I looked at him. Payroll is a dependency. HR cleared her throat. This isn't personal, Maribel. I nodded. It never is. The CEO finally looked at me. We don't need your timekeeping and payroll system anymore. There it was. Clean. Final. I waited a beat. Then you don't need me. Andrew smiled like that solved something. We appreciate everything you've done, the CEO said. But Andrew will be taking ownership going forward. Ownership of what I asked? Operations. Andrew said, end to end? I leaned back. Then you need to hear this. Nobody stopped me. So I kept going. Friday is the actual cutoff. I said, if the ACH files aren't encrypted and transmitted to the bank by 4:00 p.m. today, the funds won't clear by Monday morning. You're not just missing a deadline, you're triggering a default. Banks don't do favors, and unions don't do silence. HR shifted. We'll have coverage with what I asked. Andrew said, we've reviewed the workflows. I said, you've reviewed screenshots. The CEO frowned. Are you saying this will fail? I'm saying it won't run. I said, there's a difference. Andrew laughed. Quick and sharp. You're overestimating the risk. I stood up, not angry. Just done. I'm underestimating how much this hurts when it goes wrong. I said, because I've been the one fixing it. The CEO slid the folder toward me. Your last day is Friday. I took it. Then Monday is yours. No one answered that. So tell me when leadership ignores reality. Do you fight or do you walk away? They gave me 4 days to hand over 8 years. HR sent a calendar invite titled Knowledge Transfer. 2 hours, no agenda. Andrew showed up late and sat at my desk like it already belonged to him. Let's keep this high level, he said. We don't need every edge case. I said, every edge case is why this works. He waved it off. We're simplifying. Finance joined on video. Someone asked, can we run payroll faster with the new setup? Andrew answered before I could. Yes, fewer checks, fewer approvals. I leaned in, and fewer breaks. Nobody wrote that down. They wanted passwords, not context. They wanted diagrams, not judgment. Andrew kept saying, we'll automate that. Like automation was a spell you cast. I pulled up the cutoff schedule. Monday morning is non-negotiable. HR said, we understand timelines. You understand calendars. I said, not consequences. Andrew sighed. You're making this sound fragile. It is fragile. I said, that's why it's protected. He showed me his solution. Clean, bright, everything fit on one screen. Time entries fed straight into payroll, no pause, no review layer. Where is the manual reconciliation layer? I asked, pointing at his screen. How does the system flag a gross to net variance? We've automated the overrides. Andrew replied, barely looking up. The algorithm smooths out anomalies over the next pay cycle. It's about flow, Maribel, not friction. People don't pay rent with flow, I said. If the batch contains a single negative net calculation because of a tax coding error, the bank's gateway will reject the entire file. You won't just have one mistake, you'll have 0 deposits. Andrew stared at the screen, his confidence flickering for the first time. The system is designed to balance the data over time, he insisted. Though his voice was thinner, I didn't blink. People don't get paid over time. Andrew, they get paid on Monday, and sample data doesn't call the labor board. Real people do. I stared at him. People don't get paid over time. They get paid on Monday. He smiled again. We tested it with what I asked. Sample data. I closed my eyes for a second. Sample people don't call unions. The COO jumped in. Maribel, we need cooperation. You need understanding. I said, and you don't want it. By Thursday. They stopped asking me questions. They started telling me what they'd already decided. Andrew approved changes I'd warned against. HR asked me to document anything critical, like that was a finite list. I wrote until my fingers hurt. Not because they deserved it, because the people waiting on those paychecks did. Friday afternoon, Andrew clapped his hands. I think we're ready. I looked at the clock. I looked at the cutoff date on my screen. You're not, I said. He didn't respond, just nodded, confident, certain. I packed my desk while Andrew ran meetings in my name. HR stood in the doorway pretending not to watch. She finally said, you don't have to rush. I'm not. I said, I'm done. She handed me a checklist. Badge, laptop, access revoked at end of day, clean, efficient, like they were proud of it. Andrew stopped by around noon. We've got it covered. He said, you can relax. I looked at him. That's what scares me. He laughed. You're still worried I'm always worried. I said, that's why nobody missed a paycheck. He didn't answer, just nodded like we'd agreed on something. A supervisor named Carla caught me by the elevators. This feels wrong, she said quietly. It is. I said, what happens Monday? I hesitated. Either it works or it doesn't. She swallowed. And if it doesn't, I didn't lie. People won't get paid. She didn't say anything after that, just hugged me. Fast, like she wasn't sure if it was allowed. I dropped my badge on the desk outside HR. The security guard avoided eye contact. He knew. Everyone knows when something bad is coming. They just don't want their name on it. Andrew called out as I walked past the conference room. No hard feelings. I stopped. I warned you. He shrugged. We'll be fine. That was the moment I understood. They didn't want sabotage. They wanted silence. They wanted me gone without friction, without noise, without responsibility following them out the door. I walked out anyway. No speech, no email blast, just keys in my hand and the knowledge that I'd done what I could without burning the place down myself. Monday didn't wait for permission. At 8:03, my phone rang. HR, I let it ring once. Before answering, Maribel, she said. Voice tight. We have an issue, I said. Define issue. The payroll file was rejected by the bank. Why, I asked, already knowing. Invalid totals, she said. Some accounts show negative net pay. Others show overtime rates that don't exist. I heard Andrew in the background. Loud, sharp. Tell her to help us fix it. I took the phone off speaker. I don't have access. We can restore it. HR said, just temporarily. That won't fix your data. I said, it'll just make it messier. Andrew grabbed the phone. This shouldn't be happening. It is, I said, because you skipped review. He snapped back. We tested everything. With what I said, silence. Then, we're under pressure here. So are the people who didn't get paid. I said, texts started coming in while he talked. A supervisor saying his crew was standing around. Someone else asking why their pay stub showed 0 hours. One message just said, unions asking questions. HR whispered, what do we tell them? I said, the truth, that payroll didn't run. Andrew cut in. We don't need to involve the union yet. They're already involved. I said, you just don't know it. He lowered his voice. Can you come in? I didn't answer right away. I watched another message pop up. A warehouse worker asking if this meant rent would bounce? No emojis, no anger, just facts. This is exactly what I warned you about. I said, you treated payroll like a button. Andrew exhaled hard. So what now? I looked at the clock. 8:31. The window was already closing. So tell me when pay disappears. Who do people blame first? The first call came from a number I didn't have saved. This is Victor, the voice said, calm. Too calm. I represent the warehouse and transport crews. I figured. I said, he didn't waste time. No one got paid. Work stopped. Andrew tried to take the phone again. This is an internal matter. Victor laughed once. Payroll isn't internal. It's rent. It's food. By 10 o'clock, forklifts were parked. Trucks sat loaded and idle. Supervisors stopped pretending this was a glitch. HR whispered. Can we tell them it'll be fixed today? Victor answered for me. You can tell them whatever you want. They're not clocking in, Andrew snapped. This is escalating too fast. Victor said, it escalated when you missed payroll. Someone from operations joined the call. We're bleeding money every minute. Victor replied, so are our people. The CEO finally spoke. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. We're working on a solution. Victor said, you had one. Silence followed. The heavy kind. The kind that shifts power without anyone raising their voice. Another message hit my phone. A photo of a locked gate. Someone wrote, news is outside. Andrew swore under his breath. This is turning public. It already is. Victor said, once pay disappears. Secrets don't last. The CEO asked me directly, what do we do? I didn't soften it. You can't outrun this. You can only face it. Victor added. And until you do, nothing moves. By noon, the building was quiet in a way it never had been. Not calm, suspended, like everyone was waiting for someone else to blink first. So tell me at this point, what options does leadership really have left by Tuesday morning? Nobody was pretending anymore. The gates stayed closed. Crews stood outside with crossed arms. Someone taped a handwritten sign to the fence, pay first, work later. A reporter shoved a microphone toward the CEO. How many workers are affected? He said, we're assessing. Victor cut in from behind him. All of them? Andrew tried to pull him aside. You're making this worse. Victor didn't lower his voice. You did that when you skipped payroll. Cameras caught everything. The missed checks. The locked sites. A driver telling a reporter he'd been working 12-hour shifts and now couldn't cover daycare. No music. No slogans. Just facts said out loud. HR called me again. Legal wants to know if this is technically a strike. It's not technical. I said, it's real. The CEO finally stopped dancing around it. He called me directly. They're demanding back pay plus penalties. I said, that's how contracts work. We can't afford this, Andrew said in the background. You couldn't afford to miss payroll either. I said, operations chimed in. We're losing $200,000 an hour. Victor answered before I could. Our people lost their whole week. By noon, the governor's office had left a message. By 1, the bank froze outgoing payments. By 2, the board demanded a call. The CEO's voice cracked when he said my name. We need you back. Andrew didn't speak. That was new. I warned you. I said, not angry. Just clear. We'll agree to terms. The CEO said, whatever you need. I watched a clip replay on my phone. A worker saying, we don't want drama. We want our money. That was it. No speeches. No villains. Just pressure closing in from every side. This wasn't about pride anymore. It was about who blinked first and how much damage stayed after. So tell me, could this disaster have been prevented? Or was it inevitable? The CEO called at 6:42 in the morning. I need you back, he said. No buffer, no script. Just that. Say it clean. I said, why, our payroll is down. The bank froze transfers. The union won't move. And Andrew. I said, a pause. Then, he's out of operations. Publicly. I said, and permanently? Yes, he said. He'll report to marketing analytics. No sign-off power. Good. I said, next, I come back with authority. Direct line to finance and IT. No middlemen. Done. Here are my terms, I said, my voice flat. First, I need full administrative override access restored before I park my car. Second, we are issuing manual wire transfers immediately base pay, plus a 10% liquidated damages penalty for the breach. Third, Andrew is removed from the payroll server architecture permanently. He loses all right access. Effective now, if you want the trucks moving by noon, I need the signed addendum to my contract waiting in my inbox in 20 minutes. Andrew's voice cracked through the speaker. That's excessive, I said. Missing payroll is excessive. Silence. Then the CEO again. Agreed. I walked back into the building 2 hours later. Victor nodded once. That was enough. HR didn't speak. Finance slid the files over. I rebuilt what they broke. Not fast? Correct. When the bank confirmation came through, the room exhaled like it had been holding its breath for days. Payroll cleared. Accounts funded. Messages stopped sounding desperate and started sounding relieved. The CEO stood there after smaller than before. Thank you, he said. I didn't say you're welcome. I said, next time you think about replacing experience with confidence, remember this week. Andrew didn't look at me. He didn't have to. Power had already moved. Here's what I'll say to anyone watching this play out from the outside. If you hold something critical together, don't let anyone convince you it's invisible. Protect your work. Protect the people it feeds. And if you walk away clean. If this story hit close to home, talk about it. Share it. Say what you would have done. Conversations like this keep the next payroll from breaking before Monday ever comes.